Today we're gonna do something inaugural here on my BookTube channel. We're gonna start a tier list. I know, something new and different, except I haven't never done one of these before, so I'm kind of nervous. I'm a little excited. But we're gonna be breaking down and ranking some of my favorite and least favorite fantasy writing tropes. And as a bonus, we're gonna see which ones of those I'm guilty of as an author myself. Probably all of them, because I am a hack. So this should be fun. It's all meant to be in good fun, and it's all meant to be for your guys' enjoyment. I want to know what you guys think. If you guys agree with my rankings, leave a comment down below. Hello, if you're new here, my name is Andrew Givler. This is GivReads, where I recommend books, talk about books, write books, talk about writing books, and everything in between. I'm an author and a YouTuber. We're having a lot of fun. If you have any questions, you can find the links in my description below. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you haven't hit the like button, you have to do that too. It's just the rules. And let's break down some fantasy. Now, I did a bunch of Googling, looked up a whole bunch of different press pieces and fluff pieces to talk about the most common fantasy tropes. And I came up with about 13 of them that were mentioned fairly regularly. I didn't take all of them. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is a list of things that are exhausting. That's not true. They're not exhausting, but they are used extensively. So that's how we came up with the criteria for this list. If you think there's one I missed, too bad. Okay, so the first one that we have is all-powerful artifacts, right? Look, we got the Infinity Stones right here. Ooh. This is anything from magical items that fix the world or break the world to literally the Infinity Stones. That was the best example I could think of for that category. And I'm torn on this one because I'm a sucker for an all-powerful artifact. Some of my favorite novels have all-powerful artifacts in them, or incredibly powerful ones. The Dark Glory War has an incredible one where the dude finds like a magic sword and it starts like this whole problem. I love that. But sometimes it's a crutch, right? I didn't really understand the Deathly Hallows too well, for example, in Harry Potter. I mean, I got it. I read the book, but like, of all the things in that was the thing that didn't land very well for me. Like, magic was so soft that it was hard for me to define exactly how they worked. The Infinity Stones themselves, they're sort of just like a crutch. Not a crutch, but they're just sort of like a reason for everything to exist, right? I think I'm gonna go A. I think I'm gonna go A with this, but I may move that later, okay? Also, if you're unfamiliar with tiers, S tier is the best. It's like godlike, it's incredible. D tier is terrible. A is like pretty good. Like B is okay. C is like usually not good, and D is terrible, right? Okay, so there we go. Number 2 is The Chosen One. I chose Luke Skywalker to represent this. Okay, you know what? We're doing this. I told you things might move. The Chosen One's great. It's necessary, almost, right? In order for there to be a story, sometimes, especially if you're having a protagonist who hasn't protagonized before, there has to be a reason. He has to be drawn into it. And having things that happened before they were born or after or whatever, being the part of a prophecy, that's a lot of fun. I mean, that's everything from Star Wars, the Lord of the Rings, the Wheel of Time. I will now name every book that has a Chosen One. Please stand by. It's a lot, okay? Oh yeah, I forgot. I'm supposed to be saying whether or not I'm guilty of this. All-powerful magical items, I don't think I'm guilty of. Chosen One, you could argue it. I don't know. We'll get back to that one. Like ish, 50-50. This next trope I thought was kind of like a generic one because it was like lurking, waiting, all-powerful evil, right? Sauron, Voldemort, the Dark One from Wheel of Time, Tash from Narnia. There's got to be more. What other books have I read? The Sealson in the Empire of Silence. What are the name of the bad guys in Name of the Wind? The Forsaken that are lurking around. I can't remember what their names are. They have a really cool name. The demons in Soul Fraud. Definitely guilty of this one. I'm gonna put it in A because I also think lurking evil and Chosen One kind of have to go together, right? They almost always, the Chosen One has to be chosen to fight a lurking all-powerful evil. I thought it was kind of dumb that this one was like considered a trope because like, I guess the difference is something like Game of Thrones doesn't have a lurking evil, but Game of Thrones does have a lurking evil. It has the White Walkers. That's a lurking evil. I feel like fantasy kind of has to have it. Maybe something that's a bit more like grimdark, like Abercrombie or something doesn't really have a lurking evil, I guess. But I would say 75% of fantasy has it, and I think it's necessary to some degree. Ooh, do I need to move it up here? We'll come back to this. Next is dragons. S tier. I will not be taking any questions on this. No, okay, I will take some questions. Dragons, I feel like, are overused. Dragons are my favorite fantasy race. I think they're so cool. I'm super about them. Am I guilty of using them? Absolutely. There's the Dragon Dons in the Soul Fraud universe, which haven't shown up too much, but I have reference, so that's not a spoiler. But there's also a lot of dragon tropes that aren't good. You know what I mean? Like, dragons are overused because they're so cool. Like, their general usage, they might be B. Because B is basically the category that's like, when it's done well, it's done amazing. But is it always done well? No. And I feel like that's the same for all powerful magical objects. All right, we're gonna leave it in B for now. Next up, we have, this is like good versus evil. Not like everything's good versus evil, but like the super like straight drawn, like high contrast good versus evil, heaven versus hell. This is like Wheel of Time, right? The dragon versus the dark one. The Lord of the Rings, the humans versus the orcs. Like there's no gray area. It's just like, these are the good guys and these are the bad guys, and you will watch them fight. I feel like modern fantasy is really moving away from this, but like old school fantasy, high fantasy really went with this. Harry Potter has it. Lord of the Rings, I said. Narnia has it. Wheel of Time has it. Really, I think the better implementation of it these days is there is a hard like good versus evil thing, but then there's a whole bunch of gray area happening down here that's like involved in it, interwoven, but it's not the main focus. Like Game of Thrones, I think, is an excellent example of this. Good versus evil is humans versus the Nightwalker, right? But you got the Lannisters versus the Targaryens versus the Starks. That's all grayish. I mean, not even. Some of them are evil too, but like a different kind of evil. I might put this in C for now and see how it goes. Hey, I should be a writer. Because what I'm going to say that this represents is like, that's the only thing going on, right? So not your Game of Thrones adaptation, but just straight up like, there's only good versus evil, and that is the only conflict that is occurring, and there is no nuance. I think in that instance, it's C. Like, it can be fun. It can be great. There's some excellent books that have done it, but in general, I think you need a little more nuance to elevate, maybe? I could be wrong. Okay, this next one. You can tell how I felt about some of these as I was choosing them, because this is the lucky apprentice, right? Or the unbelievably lucky, talented person who has no talent, right? So Anakin Skywalker and the Phantom Menace, where he flies the ship on accident, flies through the entire starfight, nobody looks at him, lands in the docking bay, goes, oh, what button do I press? And blows up the shield generator of the donut ship, right? That's the like incredibly lucky apprentice, the Deus Ex Machina. He didn't mean to do that, he just did it. He had no business being there, no business surviving, and yet saved the day.
What's that? It's blowing up from the inside.
We didn't hit it.
Now this is pod racing.
I hate that trope almost all the time. Again, there's an exception to all of these, right? So if you're like, but what about this time that it was great? It can be done great, but in general, it really breaks my disbelief. I like it when it's believable. So if Anakin was to do that, I mean, and they tried to do it with the whole pod racing thing, but pod racing and starfighter piloting, not the same thing. Not the same. Not the same. Don't get me started. Don't get me started. I have a lot to say. I need a stress ball. Where's my stress ball? Where's my stress ball? I don't own a stress ball. Best I can do is this stress shoe. I don't really know that I'm getting the vibe I was looking for out of this. I'm going to leave this in D. There's a chance I bump it to C, but I feel like it's worse in general, like the general application of it, like in somebody's like first time writing or something when they're really still finding their feet. I feel like the apprentice who has no business getting away with what he's doing is a worse crime than good versus evil and there's no nuance, I think, for me right now. Okay, coming up next. Oh, look, it's Hogwarts. Basically magic schools or, things set in that. I'm gonna put it in, I'm gonna put it in B. Also, I am not guilty of The Apprentice, I don't think. I would argue that I'm not. However, I certainly, look, there's some nuance, right? Because your protagonist, well, I'm back on this one. Hold on, we're just putting this back down here. When your protagonist gets away with something that most people wouldn't, that's fine. It's just there's a sliding scale, right? And if you bust out the other end, it hurts my feelings. Matt gets away with some things he shouldn't be able to. But also, does he? I'm not gonna give any spoilers, but does he? I think I'm not as guilty of that one. Okay, anyway, magic school. So this is where like you set everything like a training montage, magic school. That's like a huge part of the character development. Not guilty of this one. Obviously, there's some incredible books like this. Hogwarts, Name of the Wind, Iron Prince. All three of those take places in schools and are fantastic. I'm gonna put that at B. Mostly because my biggest complaint with it is actually, I think most of the time it's fine. The Wink Saga, tons of fun. I think my biggest complaint with it is it's done so much, right? Harry Potter's so foundational to like this generation of fantasy that everybody leans into it. One of the things I love about Dresden is he never went to magic college, right? It's more like overplayed for me rather than it is not good. That doesn't mean that you can't do it well. I love Iron Prince. He went to magic school in Iron Prince. But you know what, Bryce, you did a good job. You didn't make me upset he went to magic school. It was sci-fi fighting school, but it's the same thing. So we're gonna put that at B, because I feel like Infinity Stones, dragons, like it's used a ton, but it's really good, and that's why it's used a ton. So we're gonna put it at B, and I'm gonna be happy with it being there. Hey, that's 2 tier list puns in one video. Let's go. Okay, next up is the Mentor. I chose Dumbledore to represent this. Man, this is all over the place, right? Because obviously there's Dumbledore, there's Obi-Wan Kenobi, there's Brom from Aragon, a couple different characters in the Name of the Wind, but there's not like one like titular mentor. There's Orion and Sulfrod. Guilty! I think I'm also gonna put it in B, which is it's good but also overplayed, right? My biggest complaint about everything in B, I've decided, is it's really good, and that's the problem. Everybody knows it works, so everyone's like, put it in. It also depends on like the level that you're leaning into it. Brom in Aragon is like this very overshadowing figure, right? And then he gets killed, and that's why. Like, he's there for a short period of time to inject a ton of knowledge. That works really, really well. Same with Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's there for a little bit of time, and then they're like, hey, he's gonna overshadow. Get rid of him. That can work, but it is also, that's a trope in and of itself, I think, is that, hey, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you are gonna be the, like, you can't stay, because as long as you're here, Luke will never become who he is. So whenever I read a mentor like that hands-on, I know he's going to die. I just know. Versus Dumbledore. Dumbledore was like a hands-off mentor. He was there to guide, but he wasn't like in it, you know? Those work great and are necessary, I think, because it doesn't work also if your protagonist has to figure out everything on their own and they just get it. Nobody gives them any clues, any guide. Nobody's that smart, right? You can't learn the entire summation of human knowledge about a particular subject without a teacher. So the teacher part is necessary. It's, I think the part that's actually the trope is when the mentor's really overbearing and still very powerful, and then they die, because obviously they have to in order to propel the character into growth. So if you can find a way to go around that, incredible. If you can't, I don't know. It's predictable is my biggest complaint. So my biggest complaint about B is predictability. With maybe the exception of the dragons. We're gonna put the dragons like either here. These two are definitely predictability. These two are kind of like, just, they're done a lot, right? Do them well or different, because otherwise they're really gonna be like, okay, I've read this, you know, this is a familiar road. And that's really what we want. We want each book to feel familiar but unique, right? Is this why everybody does tier lists? This is fun. If you guys want me to do more tier lists, leave a comment down below with some suggestions for some tier lists, okay? Okay, next one is an overqualified party. So this is basically when you have a party where nobody's special and then they all end up being special. The killer example of this is the Wheel of Time, and I freaking love the Wheel of Time, where you have Randall Thor, Perrin, and Matt all grow up together, right? And then all 3 of them turn out to be Taverns, and all 3 of them turn out to have crazy abilities or things going on, right? The odds of the 3 chosen ones all being born next door to each other and just being found, right? It's mostly the plausibility thing. It might be like a C. We might do like this, right? Okay, put it there. I love the Wheel of Time. That's probably one of the weaker parts of the Wheel of Time, is they're like, what's this? They were all there the whole time? I think that it does start to suspend disbelief when it's like, yes, it is convenient. If you can see how something is convenient for the author, then that begins to make it a weaker trope, in my opinion, right? Now, again, putting something in C doesn't mean that it is only weak. It just means that it's weaker compared to like your S tier, your A tier, like these work all the time. I really think that Lurking Evil is going S tier. I think. We'll get back to it. We'll get back to it. Okay, next up is the quest. The classic Jason and the Argonauts, the Golden Fleece, the impossible task, the mission, the journey. I'm also putting that at B, I think, because it's the same kind of thing where like it can be great, it can be terrible. The quest needs to be believable, that people go on it, right? The Lord of the Rings, boom, that's a quest. That's like the journey. But some of the times it isn't believable, or it's clunky, or it's like, hey, we need you to go this way. I think RPG oriented stuff can be really guilty of that sometimes, where they're like, random side quest, but the side quest is going to open up the whole world. It's just another one of those moments where if it's not done well, you can see the author's hand going, and whenever you see the author's hand, that's for me the thing that really breaks a trope. If I see the caution tape and like, what's the things with the old Wild West movies where the fronts, like, like they weren't real buildings, that kind of stuff. If I can tell that you don't want me to go that way, then I can tell that it's not real. So I love quests. I think some of the quests are great. Obviously, Lord of the Rings, hello? Taking the Hobbit it's the Isengard. Well, they're taking the ring to Isengard, but I'm gonna put that at B. Although it's not overdone, it just can, you know what? I'm actually putting it at A. Because I don't think it's overdone, and my B cluster has been things that I like but are overdone. A is things that I like but aren't overdone. So we're putting it there. Okay. Up next, we have the reluctant hero. I chose Katniss Everdeen to represent this. Katniss didn't want to be a hero. She just wanted to protect her sister. And because of that, she became a hero, right? On top of the whole regime and yada, yada, yada. I do like the reluctant hero, but sometimes it gets on my nerves. Because sometimes I think that it makes me unsympathetic to the hero if they don't want to do it. Like if they just have a bad attitude about it. Han Solo is a great reluctant hero. Because, you know, you see like a character progression in them. Sometimes when the hero is just a stick in the mud about doing like what is their responsibility and what like the powers they have been given to them. If you've been given powers to protect people and you choose not to do it, I lose a lot of sympathy for you, right? So the reluctant hero can be excellent, but it can also break it for me. I'm gonna move it in A because I don't think it's overdone, but it is risky. Actually, I might put it in S. We'll get back to this. We're getting close. We're getting close to the end. Up next is Taverns. I loved this one, right? Because every fantasy series has a freaking tavern. Also, wait, hold on. Am I guilty of the quest? Yeah, I am. Am I guilty of the reluctant hero? I don't know if I'm guilty of that one yet. It's always possible. Just because I am not guilty of something yet doesn't mean I won't be in the future too. Everything's got a tavern, right? Hogsmeade, everywhere the hobbits go in Lord of the Rings. McNally's in Dresden. Every fantasy novel ever. I'm gonna put this in C because it's in every fantasy novel ever. I'm guilty of this. I have a tavern in my book, in Soul Fraud. I try to avoid going to it as much as possible, but you have to have recurring places for people to go. I get it. I do think it's overdone. I'm purely putting it there because it's extremely overdone, and I am guilty of it. Now, I actually, if you may have noticed part of the way through the video, I realized I forgot one. I put in here, this is like, I'm using this as two different things, but it's really kind of different, but we're merging them. One is just like the hero who gains in power, right? Going from weak to strong, but also like the boy becomes man kind of thing, right? The progression of a weak nobody character into a hero. This is Randall Thor. This is not Frodo Baggins, okay? Like the difference between those two. This is Kvothe in Name of the Wind. This is Radon and Iron Prince. This is obviously Lyndon and a Cradle, which is what I use to represent this. I'm gonna put this up here. The arc of the hero becoming powerful is one of my favorite. I freaking love it. I read for that crap all the time. It inject it straight into my veins. That's one of the reasons I love Iron Prince. I love Cradle. I love Wheel of Time. I love so many things. Seeing like the hero come into their own when they start out like weak and scared and afraid, and then becoming powerful, and seeing the monsters become weak and scared and afraid of them. Making that number one. That is my favorite. That is my absolute favorite, and I am very guilty of it, and I will be even more guilty of it. I will commit that crime over and over again gladly. Okay, so final review. In our S tier, we have, you know, progression of weakling to hero. We have lurking evil. Those are my two favorite, like, big lurking ones. In A tier, we have the chosen one, we have the quest, and we have the reluctant hero. Remember, A tier is like really good, when used well, crushes it. S tier is like you pretty much can't mess up. So that's why I went with that. B is things that I love but are overdone, and that's dragons, all-powerful magical items, magic schools, and the like overbearing mentor type. Okay. C is just overdone and things that are like break like the flow, the disbelief a little bit. Again, I am guilty of almost all of them. But you know, you have the unbelievable band that all were casually friends and all became heroes with the same level of like ridiculousness. The good versus evil with no nuance, and the tavern. And then D is the apprentice who saves the day without having any idea what's going on. I hate that. I hate it. I hate it. I'm only slightly guilty of it. I think that, you know, you could point out that like Harry Potter's really good at not doing that. Harry's really good at getting into the trouble that's level to like where he's at the time. Maybe a little bit above, but it's not too far out, versus Anakin like went up into space combat and was like, I blew up a spaceship. Anyway, don't get me started. We can talk about Star Wars one day. One day we will talk about Star Wars. So that's my final fantasy trope tier list. What do you guys think? I want to read your comments, so leave them down below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the like button. We'll be back with more content very soon.